Hello and welcome back to the Open Resourcery. Today is Devi's Divination Corner with myself, Devi, and today I've got on Twisted with me.
Yo.
And we are covering tarot. 78 videos in. You and your numbers.
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, 78 videos in, and of course, we're going to be covering this in terms of general overview, but 78 total cards in tarot, so it seemed appropriate.
I would agree. I would agree. So in terms of tarot, that is a lot to cover. So
Oh, yeah.
78 cards in the deck. We've got technically, I would say 5 different suits. 4 of them is cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. So pentacles is going to be coins. And then I would say the other suit is the major arcana. And they divide them into the major arcana and the minor arcana. But how about we go into a little bit of the history of it? Like, where the hell do they come from?
Yeah. Well, just in case people did not pick up on it since you just went lightning fast into it, the 4 suits that you were talking about of cups, swords, wands, and pentacles, those are in fact the minor arcana. So all those are classified into that section. And then the major arcana, we'll talk a little bit more so after the history of. But in terms of the history of it, right here, what I have is a brief snapshot into historical events that were major milestones for the development of tarot as we know it and utilize it today. Now, this is by no means a comprehensive or complete sort of telling of the history of tarot, but it is sufficient enough and based on the author and the source, I would say credible enough to go ahead and present. So the source of this will be from the occult book A Chronological Journey from Alchemy to Wicca by John Michael Greer. And John Michael Greer, a very prolific author in digital, the digital marketplace of books, but also physical copies as well, to whatever extent, in terms of spiritual books, magical books, all of that. Definitely a author that I prefer, but I digress. So right here, origin of the tarot, at least in a Western sense, from John Michael Greer's assessment. So 1418, origin of tarot. Playing cards reached Europe from the Muslim world in the 14th century, but the first decks known in the Western world were like modern playing cards, with 4 numbered suits. It was in the first years of the 15th century that someone thought to add a set of symbolic cards to the pack and create the first tarot deck. His name was Marziano da Tortona, the personal secretary of Filippo Maria Visconti, Duke of Milan. And an essay about the new cards that he wrote for the Duke in 1418 still survives. The additional cards in Marziano's new deck weren't the same as the standard tarot sequence. They weren't ancient Greek deities, 16 of them meant to represent virtues and vices. His invention, though, inspired others to make new decks with symbols of their own choosing. Since the sequence of emblems resembled nothing so much as the floats in the grand parades that were a common event in Renaissance Italy. The name of those parades, Triumphi or Triumphs, after the triumphal processions of ancient Rome, came to be used for the symbolic cards. Tarot readers today still call them trumps. By 450 or so, card players in Milan had settled on the 22 trumps used today, and cards painted around that year are recognizable forerunners of the modern tarot deck. Other Italian cities developed similar decks, but it was the Milanese deck that traveled with merchants to Marseille in France, which would become the most important center of tarot manufacture. By the early 1800s, tarot had become a common card game all over France, Switzerland, and northern Italy, as common as poker in the United States today. Only in a few places was it used for fortune telling, though, and it would take a pair of French occultists to transform it into the most important divination system in modern occultism. And also, it provides later dates on the particular page, which we'll be going ahead and getting into. But honestly, after that, I want to get your insight, Debbie, just your own personal anecdotes, what you picked up on there, itself before going to the next section.
Well, in terms of that, it was originally just the four suits, just like a normal deck of cards. And of course, it was still called tarot, but it was literally the four decks of cards, just like we see today. Um, of course, not 52 though, but that's really what it is.
Yes, and in the modern day, when it comes to that 52 card deck, which, truth be told, I would say more or less is eliminating the major arcana of the 22 cards and going ahead and kind of fusing the page and the knight of the minor arcana and making it, that right there, as opposed to 54 or 56, it would be, 52 in total. That practice of using those for divination is called cartomancy. And for those who are unaware, so you can take a regular deck of playing cards and you can do divination and such just like you can with a tarot deck.
Oh, exactly. I see no difference between tarot and cartomancy in terms of that because the only addition that you have is the major arcana, but you can read and divine from just a regular playing deck. That is
Oh
really all you
yes,
need.
oh yes. And the moving on, the next event or date that John Michael Greer goes ahead and states right here as important to the development of tarot, at least by his own chronological journey in his book, is tracing the tarot to Egypt, which is marked as 1781. Every era has some place in the past where it parks its dream of a golden age, and in late 18th century Europe, that place was Egypt. Little was known about the ancient civilization on the banks of the Nile, but that didn't keep writers of that time from filling in the gaps with their most enthusiastic imaginations. Antoine Court de Gibelin, and I'm butchering all these pronunciations most likely, 1725 to 1784, was one of the most successful authors in that field, and in 1773 he issued the first of 9 sprawling volumes of Le Monde Primitif, Analyse et Compare avec le Monde Moderne, the primitive world analyzed and compared with the modern world, a lavish account of ancient Egypt as he imagined it. The eighth volume appeared in 1781. In its pages, Court de Gibelin argued that the tarot, which everyone in this time thought of as nothing more than an old fashioned playing card deck, was the last surviving book of ancient Egyptian wisdom, miraculously preserved and handed down through the centuries. The word tarot itself, which had no meaning in any European language, he traced to ancient Egyptian tar, he claimed, meant road, and rog or rosh meant royal. The tarot was therefore the royal road to the wisdom of the ages. In 1781, it bears remembering, neither Court de Gibelin nor any other living human being knew how to read a single word of ancient Egyptian, which wasn't deciphered until 1821. When scholars finally learned to read the hieroglyphs, they found out that tar, rog, and rosh weren't Egyptian words at all. That the phrase royal road in ancient Egyptian is I don't know how to pronounce that, but it looks like wet NSW, which is pronounced something like Wa'at Nesu, and that nothing even remotely like the tarot existed anywhere in ancient Egyptian art or literature. Despite this, the claim that the tarot came from ancient Egypt became a standard feature of popular occult literature for the next 2 centuries. So, after hearing that, what are your thoughts, Debbie?
So I have heard this story before. Um, but not only that, I have heard that it came from India and then spread to Egypt and then from there came to the Western world of European areas, right?
Yes.
So really what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like is that those Knights Templar found a cool game and then brought it back.
Oh, yes, yes. Of course, as we read in the first little vignette here, that it was in the Muslim world
Mhm.
before making its way up to Europe. and all of that. So a steady progression westward and northward as time went on.
Yes, and while I still do believe the origins are more so in more Hindu cultures and things like that. Um, that is more so where I feel like, yeah, it probably did. And considering the close relation between the Muslim world and the Hindu world, um, that it makes sense to me.
Yes. So let's see. Moving on, we have 1783, and I'm probably gonna mispronounce this last name, but Italia publicizes tarot divination. One hand was a little bit tongue tied there. Just 2 years after Antoine Court de Gébelin claimed that the tarot deck was a relic of ancient Egyptian wisdom, another writer published the first book on tarot divination. His name was Jean Baptiste Alliot, 1738 to 1791, a working class Parisian who happened to befriend an old man from Italy. The old man had learned to tell fortunes by using playing cards and taught his system to Alliot, who promptly turned his last name around and became Italia, fortune teller extraordinaire. In 1770, he published his first book, Italia, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna try to pronounce the rest of that French name, but in more so of an English translation, it is Italia, or A Way of Entertaining Oneself with a Pack of Cards by Mr. and then it just has three asterisks there. So I take it, his last name, which taught readers how to read fortunes from an extraordinary playing card deck. A book of astrological predictions followed in 1772, and then an expanded version of Italia in 1773. The publication of Court de Gebelin's Le Monde Primitif seems to have struck Italia like a thunderbolt, and he acquired a deck of tarot cards and began studying them at once. In 1783, the first of four volumes of Italia's masterwork. I'm not going to lie, I'm just going to go with the English name. A Way of Entertaining Oneself with a Pack of Cards Called Tarots. Interpreted the tarot in terms of the Court de Gebelin's pseudo Egyptian lore. His studies of the tarot led him to take an interest in the entire occult tradition, and the years that followed saw him publish books on astrology, alchemy, and other occult sciences. In 1788, he founded an organization, Société des Interprètes du Livre des Thought, Society of the Interpreters of the Book of Thought, to teach his methods of tarot divination, and 2 years later, he launched a more ambitious organization, La Nouvelle École de Magie, the New School of Magic. He died the next year, and not long afterward, the school vanished in the turmoil of the French Revolution. So, after hearing that, thoughts?
So thoughts on that one is he really got into the occult. Like
Yes.
he got the bug, and that's fine.
Yes.
But with anything, and I talk about this in divination tools, it is how it is interpreted. Anything can be a tool. Literally seeing a certain kind of bird fly in the sky. It can be a certain kind of flower, like how it grows, uh, incense smoke, things like that. So
Eating a
using,
bucket of KFC and then throwing the dang chicken bones.
I mean, throw the chicken bones. That's fine too.
Yes.
But it is left up to the interpretation and really the communication across like the veil or the barrier, whatever you want to call it, to get more accuracy in it. So while it's very much pseudoscience, and I will 100% say that. Whenever you attribute something to it, it's like you kind of put the rules on it. Um, just like a pendulum, like we've talked about pendulums before. The way that I do pendulum, if it's going clockwise, that's a yes. Counterclockwise, it's a hell no. Um, that's how I read pendulum. But I've seen people do certain kind of back and forth swings. They don't even go in circles. So it's like, okay, that really all depends on your interpretation. And he found the way that his interpretations worked, how he was able to communicate and divine things and then just spread it out to the public. But the the downfall of things like that is saying this is the only way that it can be read. This is the only way that things work, and it's just like no, absolutely not.
Yes. The only thing I will go ahead and state in contrast to what you stated was the particular label of pseudoscience on manners of divination or tarot in particular, in the sense that, in both of us being
Mm-hmm.
tarot users to differing extents, you more so in, I would say, more so experience than I, but regardless, in utilizing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is not necessarily seen as, okay, it's completely materialistic in terms of how it operates, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, you can apply the scientific method to it in the sense of, you know, what sort of results are gotten from different sorts of intentions and prompts, and more so from experience, right? There
Mm-hmm.
could be data collection in relation to it, and more so studies done, and I'm unaware as to what extent that the scientific peer reviewed community has gone ahead and done that for tarot. But all in all, you could apply that to this particular sort of method. And honestly, I believe it would hold true and strong. And one more thing, that's in terms of the label of pseudoscience, when it comes to things of a spiritual, metaphysical, occult nature, what have you, honestly, I just view it as science that modern materialistically focused science just does not comprehend yet.
No, that I can agree with. The reason that I call it pseudoscience is because it is going to differ on the person. This is something where the meanings for the cards might be slightly altered for me, whereas for you, you're not going to see them the same way that I do, or you're not going to have them interpreted the same way that I do. So it can't really be mimicked or um, replicated by somebody else. Because there's two different ways to read cards, and this is kind of where we kind of split off, and we're going to go on a little bit of a tangent, just a little one. There is intuitive readings, and I do a combination of intuitive and then just by the book reading. So intuitive readings, that's where people's got the extra sensory stuff going on, right? We've got those empathic feelings, we've got those claircognizant feelings going on, and it's just like, oh, there it is, that's what it is. But it doesn't necessarily follow 100% the book on what the tarot reads. But it's going to tell you the story based on the picture. It's going to tell you the story based on the feelings that are associated, and it's going to provide more clarity. Think of it as like the tarot almost becomes glasses whenever things are a little bit blurry.
And the symbolism helps to go ahead and illustrate that in
Exactly.
some way, shape, or form. Yes, the picture is providing 1,000 words, you could say.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know the way that I use it, like a client will ask me a question or a friend will ask me a question, I have an initial feeling of it. And typically, while I'm shuffling the deck, I will actually tell them my initial feeling, and I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm seeing. Um, Sometimes, very, very rarely, this is what I hear, and then I'll look at the cards and I'm like, ah, yep, there it is.
Oh, yes. But in kind of reeling it back a little bit and getting back to the overall historical vignettes, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the last of the four from the particular book. Once again, the Occult Book: A Chronological Journey from Alchemy to Wicca by John Michael Greer. If you're interested in not only just this, but a lot of different important dates in the progression of occultism, magic, in the Western sense, spirituality, all in all. But here we go. 1910, the Rider Waite Tarot deck. So for those who have some sort of interest in tarot or what have you, this is probably the most common sort of deck or the first thing you're going to hear about, which we'll elaborate on after I read this particular section.
Mm-hmm.
In a certain sense, it was a match made in heaven. Pamela Pixie Coleman Smith, 1878 to 1951, was a talented American artist with an interest in occultism. Arthur Edward Waite, 1857 to 1939, was a lifelong student of the occult who needed an artist to create an innovative new tarot deck. The two of them met by way of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, to which both belonged. In 1909, when the Golden Dawn had fallen apart and Waite was the head of one of the surviving fragments, he and Smith began work on the project, with Waite providing the symbolic content and Smith handling all the other aspects of the design. In his research into tarot, Waite had discovered a 15th century version, the Sola Busca tarot, in which the numbered cards of the four suits as well as the trumps had their own complex symbolic images. The new tarot deck took the same approach. Waite drew on his extensive knowledge of magical symbolism and the Golden Dawn's tarot teachings to provide each card with a memorable image. Smith painted the images in a crisp, instantly recognizable style that drew on her knowledge of the symbolist movement in art. The deck was published by Rider and Co. in 1910 under the name of the Rider-Waite deck. Waite remained an influential figure in the British occult scene until his death in 1939. Smith lived on until 1951, but her interest in occultism was already waning when she painted the deck. In 1911, she converted to Roman Catholicism and spent the rest of her life in relative poverty, eking out a living from book illustrations, sales of prints and paintings, and professional storytelling. It wasn't until the 1970s, when occultism became popular again across the Western world, that the Rider Waite deck took its place as the most successful and influential tarot deck of the 20th century. So, thoughts?
I mean, it is the most widespread, but not the one that I use actually.
Oh, yes. Many different variations based on the
Yes.
model of the Rider Waite, but not
Hmm.
having the same sort of imagery or symbolism, and of course having their own sorts of expressions. But yes, go
Absolutely.
ahead, talk
So
about it.
with the Rider Waite, you have to figure, yes, a lot of it in illustration and everything like that. It takes a lot of things from the Kabbalah, it takes a lot of things from Christianity because you have to remember how influential everything was at that time, right? And they were from the Golden Dawn. So, it has all of this kind of like tornadoed all together, and uh it's hard to describe, but you see my brain just like stopped functioning. It's just like focus on this,
Oh,
but
you're all
words are
good.
not coming to me.
Oh, you're all
um
good.
it's all good.
Yeah. Oh, I while your brain is fomenting and stewing and all of that, I will say that for the Rider Waite Tarot deck, yeah, it's the most commonly used. And for myself, right, I'm honestly just like, all right, keep it simple, stupid. Most widely available, most widely recognized. I have not necessarily had a particular other tarot deck of 78 or what have you with differing expressions and imagery will call me enough to be like, all right, go ahead and start using this one and all that sort of thing. Because truth be told, while there may be like, say for example, right, there's 10 of cups in one and in the other, but the imagery, the symbolism is different. So in that sort of sense, it's becoming yourself acquainted to the symbolism, the once again, like the symbols, paint 1,000 words, right? To paraphrase that popular saying. That's
Hmm.
kind of like having to reacquaint yourself with that once again. At least for me, and I'm sure that applies to many other people as well. So I'm just once again keeping with the keep it simple, stupid model, not only for myself but also in doing readings for others. Translating that is more so just easier because most people are familiar with it.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with what I was saying about being an intuitive reader already. Is that I don't vibe with the Rider Waite very much. I don't. And I don't find much that feels right about it to me.
Yeah.
So the deck that I use is called the Night Sun deck, and to me it's gorgeous. But it has less of that Christian overtone, I would say.
Yes, you and your darker, more edgier aesthetic.
Ha ha
Yes.
ha ha ha, yes. Um No, but this one I vibe with. Like I've gotten two of them because, to be honest, I'm a little rough on my cards. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
Um, so I have a backup just in case. Uh,
Yes.
but with that, the Rider Waite is not everything. It is a good starting point. It is a good learning point because my first deck was it was literally the deck of the Golden Dawn. That
Yes.
is what it was. I
Yeah.
just passed that down to one of my kids actually, so
Yes.
she can start learning. Um, but I know the ones that I use, and I'll probably eventually get her another one that she more vibes with. Um,
Yeah.
but oh goodness, I'm trying to
Yes.
think of where to go from here.
Oh no, you're good. I will say that I do understand like the not feeling wholly, in sync with the whole Rider Waite because Arthur Edward Waite himself was of the Golden Dawn tradition, Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, and for those who are unaware, just to put it very simply put, they put their own personal spin on things as opposed to being wholly true to what preceded and what have you, which granted all of us doing, creative works, right? Whether it be magical, spiritual in nature, artistic, whatever the case may be, we're going to put our own personal spin on things, right? And with each iteration, alteration, it's our own twist, building upon what came before it, whatever inspirations were there. Thus, it's not necessarily as much of like being in compliance with the original source material. And the same can apply for, Devi's affinity for Night Sun deck or any other decks that she uses, or for anyone who uses a spin off sort of deck with its own particular imagery. But I think that sort of thing of like it is touted as the most popular and kind of like the base default or a template for the modern day, but it in of itself is not that. You can sense it, I guess. Is
Mhm.
that accurate to say?
Yes, very much so. I just ah, there's something about the Rider Waite. Like I appreciate it. It's almost like going into like a museum and you're seeing things about like people were part of a cult. People were part of a group of people that held some very misguided beliefs, and you're seeing the artwork and you're like, "Oh, I can appreciate that," but there's something that's just like not right about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I understand. I understand the feeling. I understand once again the viewing of it, and something that I we have spoken about many times amongst ourselves, and to whatever extent I cannot recall fully of we spoke about it on channel. But another example in relation to the Hermetic Order to Golden Dawn is that they went ahead and they switched around the order of the elements and
Mhm.
also elemental associations when it came to archangels in doing the LBRP and
Yes.
subsequently for other rituals and rites, what have you, that are used in the Western occult tradition, or what have you, to this day. That being in particular, the elemental associations of Archangel Michael and Archangel Raphael. So, in the more so traditional sense, it was that Archangel Michael, and this is an older grimoires that I do not remember the particular names of at the moment, but they're more so within either late medieval or just beginning of the Renaissance. Don't completely quote me on that as completely accurate, but Archangel Michael was seen as the air element back then, and Archangel Raphael was seen as the fire element. But when the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn switched things around, they made it to where Archangel Michael was the fire element and Archangel Raphael was the air element, what have you. So that's just one of those things of personal preferences coming into play and twitching around for whatever reason. There being an obscuration, but it becoming seen as standard or seen as gospel or seen as like if you want to say like
Tradition.
dogmatic, yeah, tradition or dogma, dogmatic religion in that sort of sense of how people utilize modern Western occultic practices to this day. Um, And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not saying you got to find the most traditional sort of manner to go by and stick to that, whatever it may be. No, but finding your own personal spin and recognizing, hey, this is my own personal spin. This is what works for me. This is not necessarily the whole base template, what have you, but the knowledge of what came before is definitely good to be informed on what came before and to not only inform yourself but to inform others. Be like, hey, look, this is the through line, and then you of course sharing and developing what your particular means and manners and practices are with others.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to figure everything has to evolve over time. Just like, the throughout the year we shift, from one astrological sign to the other, but the world necessarily doesn't shift. These angels or angles or whatever you want to call them, because there's been that talk. Um,
Yes.
they may have shifted elemental association along the line. So figure out what works for you in that one. But let's get back to the cards. So we got brief
Oh yes.
history. We've got,
Yep.
the most
Check. We've done
widely
that. Yes.
used deck, and kind of the one that most are based off of now, because that has the 78 cards, and here we are.
Yes.
So, contents. Let's start with
Contents.
the four um elemental suits, and then we will
Okay.
go to the
Yes. The
major
minor
arcana.
arcana.
Minor
Yeah. The
arcana
minor arcana.
first. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So from there, I actually want to start with wands. So wands is fire. So then you're going to have cards that is ace through 10. So 1 through 10. That's your journey. You got the seed starting point at 1, and you have completion of that through 10. Fire is energy. Fire is passion. Fire is drive. That's what, makes the gears turn and makes you go, right? So, what is
Yes.
your interpretation on that one?
You covered it very simply, and I'm not gonna lie, in terms of expanded talk about fire in of itself, we've already talked about the element of fire singularly on the channel, Metaphysics of Fire. I can go and put that in the description for those who want to listen more onto that in of itself. And the same applies to the rest of the elements of air, water, earth, and I will go ahead and provide links to that, or you can look through the channel itself for more comprehensive sort of things. But for your very simple and robust explanation for that and for the others, they will suffice.
All right. So, from that, that is going to be for all of them. Ace is going to be the starting point. That is the seed. That is a thought. That is the kind of inspiration moment. And then 10 is going to be the completion. Now, the page. The page is more of a childlike energy. The way that I've always seen it is more of a, innocence, kid like, whenever you're like, ah, I say like 4 to 10, there is an innocence and a beauty within that age of just being able to play and being free and being unburdened by the world, and curious about everything. Uh, then there goes the night. The night is after that. The night is, think more along the lines of adolescence. So you're going into teenagerdom and young adulthood with this figure that can make things happen, learning to manifest things in this world, learning to go and be driven and just like get after it. In terms of fire, so Paige is going to be more just like excitement and just like, oh, I'm curious, I want this to, like, what's going to happen if I go on this adventure, like a kid marching off into the woods, right? And the night is more so going to be like, I've got a plan and let's get this done and we're going to do this and da 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 da, and going off with their friends and having a good time, but like probably causing some chaos, because I'm not going to lie, typically with the knights, there is really only one that I would say is more stern, and that's going to be one of the other suits. But
Yes.
the knight of wands overall, that one's going to be a little bit more carefree, and still have the immortality complex of the younger people, that untouchable
Yes.
complex. Then we go into the
Before you get
queen.
to that, the
Okay.
only insert I have is in relation to the page and the knight.
Hmm.
This is what we were talking about previously when making the parallel to card like regular playing cards and doing cartomancy. This is where the page and the knight go ahead and fuse into in modern playing cards for poker, or Texas Hold'em, or blackjack or whatever. It's going to be the jack.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So when doing cartomancy with the jack, that's kind of like a fusion of those two right there, in a sense.
Hmm.
Just to
Um,
put it very
very,
rudimentary way, yes. But
very.
please continue with the rest of the court
Very
cards.
good. So then we have the queen. Queen is going to be that represented mature feminine. Um, and then, of course, the king is going to be more mature masculine. In the wands, the feminine is more of this is passionate, this is creative. So she is able to make manifest things. She is able to, you know, drive things forward because she has the power behind her. Um, the king card is more of, hey, I am a leader. I am, that spark that is starting everything, and I am able to guide everything along. Um, honestly, any project that you want to go forward, the moment that you see that King of Wands card, absolutely, 100%. Let's go. Um, so we'll go from fire to the opposite of water. So let's go to the cups. So the cups is all about emotion. But again, we've talked about water and how that is in the other video, which all of them will be
Yes,
linked. Um,
yes,
but again, 1 through 10, that is going to be the starting point and then the ending point. I will say, for personal, and I've said this so many times, Ace of Cups is my signifier that, this is my correct path. 100% this is my correct path. So I kind of lean into the cups more than anything, but that might just be because I am an overly emotional person. Ta-da!
well, yes.
Um
Water zodiac sign
yeah, yeah.
in terms of your sun.
Yeah.
So yes, it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Primary mode of being.
Well, primary mode of being not just in sun but also in rising and Mercury and yeah. But yes. So in terms of that, it's all about emotion. It is, of course, in the upright we've got the positive, and this is, well, okay, that is a lie. That is a lie. Um, it's the journey.
Yes,
Upright does not always mean that it is positive. Um, upright means that it is outward. Um, and anytime that you see something in the reverse, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always negative, because that is false. It can.
there are cards in their
Mm-hmm.
upright definitions that are more so negative, and then when it comes to reverse, that's drawing back from said negativity and kind of pulling it a little more so towards a positive polarity.
Yes, but in the reverse, a lot of the times it is more of like an inward approach or an inward facing moment than an outward one. So that's the way that I have interpreted them and that I see them. Of course, Page and Knight very much the same. So Page is like that innocence, that cutesy stuff, right? Knight is more of, think of your first puppy love, like what
Oh,
you
that's so
wouldn't do.
adorable.
What you wouldn't do for that first puppy love. Queen is, of course, that mature feminine. King is that mature masculine. So mature feminine, more often than not, the Queen of Cups is always displayed as pregnant. That is for a reason. So it's very mothering. It's very much of the nurturing and the comfort, and the masculine is more of that still comforting and caring, but more of like a sounding board. Think of it as, instead of like coming over and mothering, it is very fathering, but in a, I am here if you need me kind of way, rather than a like, let me just go baby you kind of thing.
Yes.
Swords. So actually I love the swords, and you wouldn't figure, because there's a lot of things in the swords that are not good.
Well, talk about it. What exactly are the not good sort of cards that you can expect from going ahead and dealing with the suit of swords?
So again, 1 through 10, we've got, the start of a thought, because swords, air, that is all about thoughts, that is all about how we process things, that is ideas. And with the swords, a lot of it is, think of it as, this is like roadblocks, and almost like a writer's block put onto a card. This is showing you that decisions have to be made, and you don't have enough information. You don't have everything that you need. In the Two of Swords, either upright or reversed, really, they are both the same, of just, hey, you need more information to go on than this. You have the seed of the thought, but research needs to be done. You cannot make a decision to move forward one way or the other. Seven of Swords is my least favorite, because every time I see the Seven of Swords, the first thing in my head is, why are you lying? Why? For what? For what purpose? It is deception. That is going to be somebody withholding information from you maliciously, or you withholding information, whether upright or reversed. So it's, every time I see that Seven of Swords, I kind of give people a side eye. I'm just like, tell me the goddamn truth. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. And then the Nine is my least favorite. Well, I say that nine is bad, because that one is more so anxiety. Um, think of it as trauma. This is the stuff that makes it hard to get out of bed every day, kind of thing. So whenever you see that in a spread, it is heavy. Think trying to carry like nine great swords on your back, and you can I just lay here and not move, and um I might die. I don't know. Kind of that depressive episode that just, it weighs down on you really heavy. And then 10, 10 is complete failure. 10 is complete failure. That is where things have gone wrong. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. This was not the path for you. This was not the way that was meant to happen, in a sense. So, like I said, the swords, it actually is one of my favorite suits in terms of the tarot, but it has a lot of negativity there. Um, it oh, it's very heavy, but it's very real. Instead of like
Yes.
light, fluffy, butterflies and, oh, cute little flutterings of love and whatnot.
You and your dark,
Sure.
edgy aesthetic.
No, I prefer it is not that it's dark, edgy aesthetic. It is more along the lines of, pain is real, and most people try to hide it, stuff it down, stuff it away, and refuse to
Yes.
feel it. And so when I see that, I'm just like, okay, I'm giving you permission to feel this, because you have not given yourself permission to feel this. So the only way to get through something is to actually feel it and go through it. Um, what is I'm trying to remember the verse, but it is literally walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Um,
Yes.
and that is the only way to actually get over something, is to allow yourself to experience it. Because the more that you block yourself and prevent it from happening, you're just going to cause yourself misery down the road. But again, Paige, this one takes more of a positive aspect because that's curiosity. That is the think of the child that is sitting there with its magnifying glass trying to just discover everything and seeing that beautiful innocent curiosity. The knight is more of that intellectual kid that's just like, give me more books, I need to explore more, like I'm hungry for knowledge, I need more. Queen, this one, think of it eagle eye. She may not talk very much. This is that mature feminine that may not talk very much, but she sees everything. And the moment that you make eye contact with her, you're just like, oh, she saw through my soul. I am, I feel very exposed.
Yes.
The masculine is very much the same way with that king of swords, but he is more intellectual, head over heart, very much of that by the book. Um, these are the rules. This is what it is. I'm going to lead by what is set forth. There will be no deviation. Um, but that's not a bad thing. It's just there's a little inflexibility there. And then pentacles. Pentacles,
Yes.
that earth sign. We love earth. Earth is great. This is where, the pentacles, the coins, this is where your fortune is really dealt out. And it's not necessarily, and you know what, I see pentacles a lot in terms of like relationship readings. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's all about money and that
Yes.
people are like gold digging or anything. Of course it can, but a lot of the times what I see is more, this is in the physical and they're trying to make this reality. Because earth takes some of the more like incorporeal aspects of, or incorporeal aspects of the others and makes it real. Like puts it right in front of you as just like, hey, I took the passion from fire, I took the emotion from the cups, I took the ideas from the swords, and I made it a thing. They had the ideas for this pottery, here is the pottery right in front of you, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So again, the ace being the beginning, this is, you know, opportunity. Opportunity presents itself. But ace through 10 is that completion. Um it's more along the lines of hard work. Whenever you see pentacles, there is hard work and passion and things that are lying behind it. It's not getting to a point of, oh, I lost train of thought on that one. I saw another word and my brain was just like, ha, squirrel. Um,
Ah, yes, you're all good. Yes, the pentacles, and talking about it's not just the earthly
no.
sort of desires of, say, money or material goods or what have you.
Hmm. But a lot of times earth is putting in that physical work behind it. Um, so when you see like relationship spreads and everything that has the pentacles in it, think about it this way. They are willing to put in the backbreaking work to make it happen, to make it work, to make things good. Um, because I really think that if we're looking at all of the all of the minor arcana, anytime I
Yes.
see pentacles, I'm sitting there going, okay, that incorporates all of them. It really does. And that is more so. I already stated that. I already stated that. Um,
Yes. Yes.
but 10 is going to be legacy. This is some, like, you've built your empire, everything's good, and you're able to leave it for the next generation. It's like a flowering field, completely fertile. You've worked it, you've made it to where it'll continue to grow season after season after season and provide. Page, this one's going to be more of desire. It's just like, okay, I don't necessarily have a complete trajectory, but I'm going to start working. And I'm working off of passion. I'm working off of desire. I want this thing to go forward, and it's wonderful to see. The knight is more steadfast. So think of it as like a teenager that just got their first job and they're like, I'm working towards a car. and they are doing backbreaking work. They don't care because they have their goal in sight. They're going to keep working until they get what's theirs. Queen is provider and comfort, but this is more of like a structured thing rather than maybe a smothering thing, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then the king, instead of being as standoffish as some of the others can be, this is more wholly encompassing. I find the queen and the king of pentacles, and this one's more of my feeling, they're I don't see them polarized as like masculine and feminine and things like that as much as the others. They are both very much in the middle, just kind of like
Yeah.
one on either side of the line, because they kind of encompass each other in a sense.
Oh
Um,
yes, yes.
how
Well,
would you
to make a
describe that?
parallel, well, to make a parallel to the Kabbalistic tree of life and all of that, right? Like, so what is Earth in nature of the element, right? Well, before I get to the Kabbalistic tree of life, I'll just say, like, biblically, using the Abrahamic, sort of interpretation of, it is this world that we exist in. This is actually the kingdom, right? This is the perfection in a sense, right? It's imperfect, but it's the imperfect perfection. This is where the elements converge and come together, where the polarities are both present and they can shift back and forth and all this sort of thing. It is properly constructed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas everything else are individual aspects, elementally speaking, and all of that. And thus, they're not culminated all together, higher and or lower, right? The lower expressions, negative things, they are part of the totality in of itself in their own extreme manners, and of course in this perpetual dance and balance of polarities. But this is the meeting place, and to go ahead and now utilize the Kabbalistic tree of life as a model, this is the spear of Malkuth, for those who are unaware, right? So if you look at the Kabbalistic tree of life, there's, at the top, there is Keter, right, in terms of topmost spear, but above that, that's Ain Sof, or what have you. And then you go down through the different spears and more so of lightning bolt pattern, or you can go straight down the middle. But that's that is more so for a talk on the tree of life itself, right? But
Mm-hmm.
all in all, um, you go down that and you start off with fire, and then depending on your own variation interpretation, water or air, or then you go to air or water, and then finally you end up at earth, right? So you're going from the less tangible to the tangible, the solitary, and this is the meeting point. This is where, the kingdom of God is supposed to be, as I stated before. This is where, it's supposed to be all encapsulating, right? So while it's the lowest, quote unquote, right? This is the meeting in the middle point, the balance point. Thus, why it makes sense of your own personal association of the earth element as a whole, but in particular of the figures, the queen and the king are more so balanced, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
more so grounded in the reality, but it's not as if they are like closed off to it. They have access to it. They
Mm-hmm.
are encompassing of the other things as well.
Yes. All right.
But yes, so
So
in that sort of sense, does that cover the minor arcana pretty
that
well?
covers all of the minor arcana pretty well. I think I talked a lot on that one.
Yep.
Now
Hey, not a problem. Not a problem.
now in terms of major arcana, um really I don't want to go into it too much because I would prefer to break it down piece by
Yeah.
piece.
Shall
But
shall I go ahead and shall I go ahead and take over for that, since you went on quite a bit of a tangent, give your lungs a break and all
yes.
that? All right, got you. Got you. So to keep it a bit more concise when it comes to the major arcana, what have you, as we went and talked about before, 78 total cards in tarot, right? And in having talked about the minor arcana, that's 56 cards that are accounted for right there, right? So if you go ahead and divide that into four, let me go ahead and think that's 14 cards each for each of those, right? So what we have left is, when you do 78 minus 56, that is 22. So within this 22, you start off with the Fool, and you end up with the world. Now, funny enough, on the cards themselves, the Fool has the number 0, and then when you get to the world, that is the number 21, as they are marked intentionally, of course. But alas, the Fool, just in his general sort of thing, is, 0. That is supposed to be fresh beginnings. That is supposed to be newfoundedness, openness, all of this sort of thing. I know you have like the Fool card, so before we continue, speak on the Fool.
So the Fool is the main character.
Yes.
The Fool is always open. And honestly, I think everyone should strive to be the Fool in a sense, because as much as we never know everything. So it is being open to learning, being open to new experiences, new ideas versus this closed off grumpy old codger.
Get on, God damn it!
Yes.
Yes. Sitting in a rocking chair and then getting up, with the creaky old bones and waving the cane.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yes.
Just it, old is a frame of mind. You have to work to keep yourself young.
Oh, yes, yes. But that being the Fool in of itself, right? So the freshness, the openness, and then as we go along the progression of the various major arcana cards, we end up eventually with the world, right? So in that sort of sense, that's completion, that's totality, that is going ahead and reaching that point of fulfillment, right? Of
Mhm.
supposed perfection. Now the world, as we just spoke about, with the earth element, that's the kingdom, right? So there's that sort of correlation in of itself, right? That imperfect perfection, you could say, where the
Yes.
balance is had, what have you. Go ahead and speak about that as well.
Okay, so think about the world. We think about a sphere. We think about a circle. Things are going around. Think of Ouroboros.
Yes,
What has a beginning must have an end to go into a new beginning. So every time I see the world, it is more so, yes, it is great. This chapter has closed, but a new chapter begins. So it's it's less of like this is the end of the story, because the end of the
yes,
story is literally like bleh, being dead.
yes.
um but this is the closing of that particular part.
Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and expand upon that in saying that yes, the cycle, the Ouroboros. I will go ahead and, in terms of reference, I will reference the cycles and circumambulation video that I myself did particularly. I'll put the link for that as well, amongst the many other links that will be available.
So many.
And yes, yes. And talking about cycles and just the general nature of it, right? But all in all, right? Like when it comes to the tarot, major arcana, and the fool in the world, right? You mentioned Ouroboros. That's a snake eating its own tail, and that moment, that instance is where the loop resets, right?
Hmm.
And for me, honestly, it makes me think of I want, just like you were trying to mention the Valley and Shadow of Death, and you cannot remember the particular book or chapter or verse in the Bible. I cannot remember it for this, but pretty much the statement of I am the Alpha and the Omega, right? At least,
Hmm.
the Greek characters and the translation over time of that as opposed to, say, original Hebrew. But the notion of the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, honestly, I see that as the same sort of point, the same sort of instance, and that they're two sides of the same coin, or honestly, in its true inherent core nature, the same exact thing. So when it comes to the Fool in the world, in the progression of the tarot, right, they have these differing sort of polarized, aspects that are supposed to be seen in a linear sort of sense, but honestly, they're one and the same, at least from my own perspective. What are your thoughts in relation to that?
No, I absolutely agree. Because I mean, the world is symbolizing wholeness, right? And the fool is
Yes,
symbolizing the acceptance of the new, things starting again. And if you're able to remember throughout your journey that you are whole no matter what, then you have
Yes.
won.
Yeah.
Like 100%, you have won. You have
Yes.
figured out life. You have won. Cuz let me
Yeah.
tell you, everybody forgets. Everybody forgets.
Oh yes. Oh yes, most definitely. And when it comes to the progression of the major arcana in a more so modern manner, and more so looking at mythologies and the progression of narrative and story, and all of these different things that we have, whether they're the Greco-Roman myths of ancient times or any other sort of culture or religion, or say books by Mark Twain or Shakespearean tales or modern books or even movies or shows today, they usually follow the same sort of mechanism, the same sort of you know the means in which a character, a protagonist, an antagonist, what have you, is going to progress throughout a story, and thus is usually referred to as the hero's journey. I know that Joseph Campbell, in particular, has spoken about it quite a bit. I've listened and read his speaking on it, and that may be something I delve into more so individually at some point. But alas, you know, it in of itself is the progression of a person throughout their journey, or at least a segment of their journey. Because to more so wrap up the major arcana, you may go ahead and go from the starting point to the end point of the fool to the world, but then it just keeps going on and on and on. It's a continuous cycle. It is throughout your entire life. You're going to have these themes reoccurring over and over and over again. It's never just point A, point B, it's done. It's not that polarized. It's not that simple. It's not that, because I'm not going to lie, it would be very boring, very stagnant, and more so limited than what our lives are and or are capable of being. Thoughts?
No, absolutely, I agree. I have no thoughts.
Yes.
I have none.
Okay. Okay. Yes. You've tapped out. You've been tapped out a little bit, but I think we're getting through. We've gone through the bulk of most of the things that we wanted to cover thus far. I will say that next, at least for my own, little things that we probably should address, is spreads. Right.
Hmm.
So in terms of doing card readings and all of that, you can go ahead and read as many cards as you like, and there's a variety of means and patterns and ways of doing so. For me, I am more so of a keep it simple, stupid sort of guy, and I do one card at a time for the most part, unless asked otherwise. For say two at a time, three at a time, or what have you. Sometimes I do specific sort of spreads, what have you, but more so I just keep it rudimentary. But for you, Devi, what would you say in terms of your means and manners of reading tarot? And if there's any particular spreads, official spreads, let's put it like that, that you see as more so useful for yourself?
Oh, that's hard. Okay, so for me, I don't typically use spreads. And the reason being is, like I said, I'm an intuitive reader. Whenever I am laying out cards for a client and I'm reading them, a lot of times I'll get a feeling it is, as I'm drawing them out, we're doing 4, we're doing 8, and it's showing me their progression through the journey that they're at versus you know, what's to come? What are my obstacles? Da 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 da. While spreads can be very helpful in the beginning, I just find that trying to memorize all that crap is not the greatest. Um,
Oh yes.
Now, one I have found really helpful for myself, and this is just one that I do um, in terms of laying out cards. It's like, I believe, 3 on the top. We got past, present, future, right?
Yes.
And then I do 2 underneath. What is holding me back from my past, and what is going to help me get to my future? What obstacle do I need to get to my future? And then I do one in the middle underneath that of what is the outcome of this. Um, so it's that's one that I'm not sure anybody else has come up with, but that's one that I have used several times. In terms of spreads, think of it this way: as you are giving more of a focus on, I need this specifically. It's like asking a Ouija board a specific question. They're literally spelling it out for you. So
Yes.
if you're going into it like needing that kind of thing, sure, pick a spread. Come up with your own. These ones that are like formatted like the Celtic cross and things like that. Maybe if you're at a
Yes.
crossroads in your life, absolutely use that. If you're needing just like a quick where am I situationally, a past present future works. Um
Yes.
but a lot of the times whenever you are just needing guidance, one card is just fine.
Oh, yes. Yes. And just to go ahead and mention a few more, you already mentioned past, present, future, which is just three cards, right?
Mhm.
Either on their own, or you can incorporate it with other cards and different sorts of spreads or patterns. The Celtic Cross, you already mentioned that, but there's also the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, taking that model, taking that manner of Western magic and or all that in the spears and applying that to tarot cards. You know, there's also relationship spreads of many different sorts,
Oh god,
whether it's the
yes.
basic sort of one or just other altered versions. And of course, in terms of what you're saying of specific usages, that would be for the oh my god, does this guy or girl like me? Like OMG, like oh my god, like how do they feel about me? Oh, does my ex still like me? Or something like that.
Mhm.
And yes, it could be more so in the feminine manner, which I went ahead and used the tone of voice for. It could be, a dude using it. It doesn't matter what sort of orientation or what gender you are, you can use it. But all in all, yes, those are just some examples of spreads that you can utilize as opposed to just pulling a card or pulling a couple cards in a very basic sort of manner that if you're looking for a more structuralized manner, even if Debbie doesn't recommend it, and personally for me I don't recommend it either in terms of just our own personal styles, those are definitely available and the widespread number of options. So final works for you in terms of either something that pre-exists or already exists, or maybe something you adapt for your own personal usage
Yes.
outright or as time goes on.
Absolutely.
In relation to, actually aside from that, actually no, it is in relation. I will say that just with anything of a spiritual magical sort of nature, right, and mentioning the Kabbalistic tree of life as a manner of how you can do a spread, right? There are many correlations and associations with tarot amidst other sort of aspects or practices, systems of spirituality, right? So in this sense, like with tarot, you can go ahead and correlate it with, the Kabbalistic tree of life, as was mentioned, astrology, crystals, chakras, angels, or other entities such as demons or gods or goddesses or whatever the hell it is that you're doing. And all in all, right? Like just finding, all right, these are where the patterns intersect. This is where they overlay, and thus it could potentially give you further understanding and all of that.
Mhm.
What about correlations and associations for you that come to mind on that general notion?
Days of the week.
Yes,
That's also, you
yes.
know what, technically that is a good one that I have used. I haven't used it in a while. But using that, there is one card in the center that is your lens to view everything through for the week. That kind of thing. And then you do like your Monday through Sunday. And as long as you use the, you know, everything in the week is going through this lens, you have a pretty good idea of how your week's going to go. But that's that's another
Okay,
one that I
so
was
another
thinking of.
spread,
Mhm.
another spread. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. But yes, that is one way to go ahead and do that. And once again, all different sorts of associations, correlations. Um, in terms of, I will say that this is also going to be another segue. A good segue is on the particular association correlation of angels. If you go ahead and check out Angels and Archangels by Damien Eccles, which also happens to have a foreword by John Michael Greer, who wrote the previous book beforehand, which had the different chronological events in relation to tarot and many other subjects, right? That you can go ahead and see by Damien Eccles' assessment and basing that off older materials of what angels are associated with which tarot cards, if that is something you wish to delve into in terms of angelic invocation evocation, as well as other books related to the tarot as well, or just associations, what have you, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be tarot or otherwise. For the tarot, I'm just gonna once again keep it simple, stupid, and be ahead, going ahead and say pick up the Pictorial Key of the Tarot by Arthur Edward Waite. I have my copy right next to me. And in this, it will go ahead and just tell you the general meanings of the Rider Waite Tarot deck, and that being the template, the foundation for most modern tarot decks. So, as you're saying, Devi, it's a good elementary sort of thing, a good starter point in becoming, affiliated and associated and comprehending those symbols and their
Mm-hmm.
meanings and all of that.
Yep.
And when it comes to associations, correlations, specifically parallels, I will recommend The Complete Magician's Tables, and I believe it is by Dr. Stephen Skinner. That is just based on my recollection because I haven't gone through that book in the past however many months. But yes, that right there is good for tarot associations as well as other associations as well. Are there any books on tarot that you happen to think of yourself
No.
that are no, not at
No,
all?
straight no. And the reason being on that, like I know whenever I do my own personal card of the day, because we're posting that all the time, right? I'll
Yes.
post the excerpt from um the Thoth book, but that came with the deck. That's just for my own recollection and everything like that. But I don't necessarily ascribe like, oh, tarot, let's go deeper dive into that through a book. It's just I'm more of like a jump in and just fucking do it.
Oh
Like
yes, yes, yes. Got you. Yes, go ride the wave and go with the feeling. Yes,
exactly.
yes. Surf, surf along the wave, as is your particular affinity with the water element.
Yes, me and my water.
Yes, but being that you mentioned the books within the tarot decks themselves, right?
Hmm.
And that being a potential reading resource for you to use, especially if you're a beginner. What would you say are some decks that you recommend for people to use based on your own personal experience? I'm just going to go ahead and say Rider Waite Tarot once again, basic, most used in America and the Western world at this point in time. But for you, what do you personally recommend?
I mean, my recommendation, like I said, Night Sun. I love that one, but that vibes with me. I have gotten um like two Rider Waite decks and I ended up giving them away to other people, but it's a good starting point. I do have the oh my goodness, the Thoth tarot deck. Um but this one more so hmm, I don't recommend that starting out. I don't.
More so for advanced usage?
If it calls to you.
Well, okay, so I know with the Thoth Tarot, right? It's not completely equivalent with
No, it
the
is not.
78. Yeah, it's not completely equivalent with the 78 uh rider weight, template, you could say, right? There's some distinctions. So if you don't mind sharing, what are some of the distinctions that you have noticed in using?
I mean, let me open it up real quick. So instead of the magician, it's the magus. Um, do chariot, and then we have strength, but that's called adjustment.
Yes,
Um,
using some examples of the Major Arcana.
yeah. Um,
Yes.
the wheel of fortune turns into happiness. Like that kind of thing. Um,
Yes.
it's the lovers turns into lust. It's more of a different look on it. They hold some of the same meanings and things like that. But it's not necessarily like place for place. Like in
Yes.
the well, okay, they do have the lovers, but there is still another aspect that is called lust. Um,
Yes.
but it's it's just different. It has a
Oh
different
yes.
feel to it. I like the imagery in it. I don't necessarily hold it like line for line to like the Rider Waite or anything like that, and I
Yes.
don't draw many comparisons. Um, but it's good in its own right.
Yes. I will go ahead and utilize the. I will go ahead and utilize this as a way to state that first and foremost, the Thoth Tarot was constructed by Aleister Crowley, particularly. So this is their own personalized style on card divination, right? And that being, he was a member of the Golden Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, but of course he went on to be a part of Thelema, what have you, and other organizations. But founding Thelema, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, also this being what you could potentially classify as an oracle deck, and there being various sorts of oracle decks out there, which when something is labeled as an oracle deck, for those who are unaware, that is pretty much a stand and going away from the standard deviation of the Rider Waite template.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sort of sense, you could have like 25 cards in a deck as opposed to 78 total, and them just being like particular aspects of things. Or say you have like 30 or whatever the case may be. Your thoughts on Oracle decks very briefly, and or like if you have any particular that you recommend.
Oracle decks, that is all about feeling. If it calls to you, go for it. But Oracle decks is going to definitely be along the lines of, hey, this one I vibe with, I'll go for it. Um, every deck in and of itself, even the tarot deck, it had to be created by somebody at some point. And all Oracle decks are is their own version of divination. They have found something that goes personally with them, and they have decided to put it out there for the world to also use. So I see no real difference between a tarot deck and a an oracle deck. It's just tarot because Rider Waite took on the name tarot from the older name and kind of
Yes,
stole its prestige, I will say. um because of that. Uh, all of the other ones are kind of seen as subpar, but that is not the case. You just have to
yes,
find one that you match with.
yes. And in that sense, do you have any Oracle decks that you particularly match with?
Uh, I have a couple actually.
Yes.
um,
So
no,
share them.
I gave my daughter the moon deck, the moonology deck. That one's good.
Yes.
Uh, I I actually like this one. It's called Antiques and Magic Oracle, and it goes by more of the symbology, rather like simple symbology rather than just like let me interpret everything through the cards. Like it's literally a ram or a tulip or a key or a star, like things like that, where
Yes.
you're you're more given some. It's simplistic, but simplistic is not
Yes.
a bad thing.
Oh yes. Is that all that you would say you recommend in terms of Oracle decks are good enough?
I think it's good enough. I do
Yes.
have another one. I don't vibe with it that well. I'm
Yes.
probably going to give it to somebody because I think I got it, and then I was just like, this one's not mine. This is meant to be a gift for somebody else. It's called
Yes.
the Star Seed Oracle, and it just not my thing. Not my thing.
Yes. Not your dark aesthetic. More
Ha
so
ha
new
ha
agey, head
ha.
in the clouds, fluffy, right?
Why, why are you picking on me? Um, no, but it's no, I love the artwork in it. It's beautiful. It's ethereal. It's very like watercolory, but I don't vibe with it.
Oh yes. Um, yeah, I've seen the actual artwork for these particular decks that you've gone ahead and showcased, and yeah, I would definitely say that Starseed one is by far like one of the better ones for sure. And since those are the only Oracle decks that you're saying like, hey, look, these are the ones I got, or could possibly recommend, I'll add a couple more. So both of these are actually decks that I myself have. I stated before, I use the Rider Waite, and just keep it simple, stupid, and that like for the practical usage. But in terms of decks that I've seen people use and that I like, aside from the ones that Debbie has gone ahead and shared, we have these two decks are actually ones that a friend of ours actually has. She has gotten both of them and has done readings for both of us using them and other friends that we know. But the first one is the Sacred Geometry deck, which is just very keeping it simple, stupid. Once again, of say geometrical patterns and what those particularly mean. Those including say like a dodecahedron or Metatron, you know, Metatron's cube. All these sorts of things, right? And then there's the Angelarium deck, who the artist of it is Peter Moorbacher. It's kind of gotten some popularity over time. Foolish Fish went ahead and made a video about it, which is how I became aware of its presence, right? And Foolish Fish,
Right,
for
I
those who don't
forgot
know,
about that one. I need that one. I need that one
yeah,
so bad.
yeah, the artwork is fucking great for it, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is. Oh my god, it's amazing.
Yes. Yes. And in short, that right there is like, angelarium, so angels, right? Different depicted angels or emanations or aspects of them in from a Kabbalistic sort of like source. But like Peter Moorbacher and his artistic vision kind of created a fictionalistic tale and or world for them to exist in his own interpretations of these things, and they can be used as an oracle deck. There's actually a couple separate decks and such that are utilized, right, that have been created over time, and you can put them together or use them separately or whatever the case may be. But I'll go ahead and now add a link below to the video where Foolish Fish goes ahead and showcases these, and I will not doubt if I go ahead and have a Amazon sort of link there as well, or a link for the cards in themselves to go ahead and get them for yourself. But all in all, I think that's enough for deck recommendations of tarot, as well as having branched off into oracle decks as well.
Yes.
In terms of websites, I myself prefer thetarotguide.com, and that is where I get my explanations if I feel I need any additional sort of context or insight in a written sense. How about for you, Debbie?
My favorite is Biddy Tarot, actually. I enjoy theirs. I don't necessarily always agree, because I find they can be very fluffy about it, versus being like, okay, this is hard reality. This kind of fucking sucks. But if I need like a memory boost or anything like that, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go there.
Oh yes, yes. So those are a couple websites. Links to those as well will be available. In terms of apps, now I've been stating the entire time that I do Rider Waite Tarot. I don't use physical cards. I honestly use the particular application I'm about to recommend, and that's because I'm not going to lie. When it comes to card shuffling of any sort of nature, in terms of being the most dexterous or tactile sort of person, I definitely am not by any means. That's not how I was built. I was built different, and like in that sort of sense, Galaxy Tarot is the one that I recommend. It suits my particular needs of doing card readings and all of that in a more so technomantic sort of fashion. And I'll say that the difference between this and other tarot apps, at least from what I found, is that it allows for the person using it, instead of just clicking on something, whether it be in a phone application or a desktop application or a website, clicking on give me a card and they'll pop up a card. This allows for more so of actual selection, actual utilizing or manipulating the electronic cards in a sense
Mm-hmm.
to allow for a more intuitive, naturalistic element to take place
Mm-hmm.
in doing readings. Hence why I use that as the means of doing card readings and all of that, as opposed to a physical deck. Like it has that convenience, and I don't have to shuffle damn cards and go through that sort of thing. Because I'm not gonna lie, I probably would not be doing as many readings as I have done or do if that were the case. In all honesty, but yeah, so Galaxy Tarot, it's available on app stores and other places. You can download the raw APK or what have you. There's also Labyrinthos Tarot, which was formerly known as Golden Thread Tarot. I believe both of them are still readily available by whatever medium you choose, but Labyrinthos Tarot is the more so updated version of it. And that I would say is more so for someone who's wanting to use an app to learn tarot. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that the last time I checked it out, which was a while back, there's actually like a sort of curriculum in the sense of how to go ahead and learn how to use tarot with the physical deck, and by whatever extents they have updated it to using doing digital readings and what have you on it. um, but yes, if you're trying to learn how to do tarot through an application, that would be the one to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say there's also, if you're using Discord, there's Kitsunetsuki as a Discord bot that you can utilize, and of course there's various other people and different sort of bots that are available. But that's the first and foremost one that comes to mind, and I think you know unless you have any other sort of resources, physical or digital, I think we can leave it at that.
The only other one that I would put out there, and that's just what I use, it has the functionality of tarot, but it's more of an astrology thing, is Astro Matrix. Um,
Okay, yes.
so that,
Correlations and
yeah,
yes, correlations and parallels to the tarot are throughout that deck, and having used it myself, I've noticed, yes.
yeah.
So yeah, if you're looking for parallels and associations, it's astrology. But if you're like, all right, this astrological sort of thing has a tarot component that relates to this particular card, and that helps out, then yes, Astro Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
That can go ahead and be of help. So yes, in terms of all the shit we just went ahead and mentioned, and all of that. There will be a bevy of links available, and you can go ahead and click and explore and do all that sort of thing. We have a lot of different, we have a lot of different signposts and have pointed in many different directions. And for those listening,
Yes.
choose which route you wish to go.
Choose your adventure.
Yes, choose your adventure, like Goosebumps book back in the day.
100%. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. All right. So, are we done?
Yep.
All right. So that's been a long ass talk on the tarot
Yes.
and various associated things. This is Debbie from Debbie's Divination Corner on the Open Sorcery and Twisted,
Yo.
and we will see you guys next time.
Stay frosty, Nikuses. Peace.